Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the Root to the Fruit. I am your host, Jay Smith. Today's guest is a tremendous guy, one of my best friends. Uh, he has formulated some advocacy spaces in his own company. Also, and he is married four of his friends, ordained minister, just a truly righteous individual. Enjoys helping people for any reason whatsoever, and he's helped me plenty of times. A good friend of mine, Mr. Joe Wu. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this.
The honor is all mine, brother. I just want to go ahead and get right into it. A lot of people don't know, especially in some just regular spaces, even some people that we mutually know. You're Korean, and obviously that is a different and separate culture. In a lot of ways, there are some contrasts as well as a lot of similarities. Kind of walk us through, like, you being young and kind of your upbringing and how that was kind of came into fruition.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, I was the first person in my family to be born in the U.S. And so, obviously I'm Korean, and on the exterior, most people see that I'm Asian or Korean or whatever it is. Mm. But I grew up an American kid, just like, you and others. And but growing up there was definitely some times that it was a little bit more challenging because of, on one side of me, when I was going to school or hanging out with friends, it was, that American culture. And then on the other side at home, it was kind of, more of a Korean culture in the way that my parents raised me. And so sometimes those things clashed, and, I had to kind of navigate through that growing up, especially when I was young. I didn't understand. And as I got older, luckily I kind of understood a little bit more, how to kind of move in between those two cultures. And then, as I grew up, luckily I also had a lot of friends who were in the same boat, who were also Korean Americans who were my age. And so that was very helpful. But, some of the, main differences, I'd say is that, Korean culture or Asian culture in general with your family, it's very, it's more, your household's very set up with structure of, all right, your parents are your parents, and, there's the relationship between you is very, there's a lot of love there. And I knew my parents loved me, but the way they kind of expressed that love and care for me was different than a traditional, like, American household that, like, my friend down the street would have, less affection, less like physical affection, less even verbal affection, a little bit more maybe strict rules or higher expectations sometimes. So, as a kid, I resented that at times because I saw, once again, my friends at school or whatever kind of receive or love in a different way, or, kind of interact with their families in different ways. And, obviously watching TV, I would see an episode of Full House where the dad would interact with, the kid and whatever it is. And I didn't really see that on a personal level. But then as I got older, I appreciated it more because it kind of gave me an independence that I feel like helps me out to this day, where I kind of am able to use that, the things that I kind of learned or, felt back then, it makes me a stronger person today. And so, it was an interesting thing growing up. Like I said, it was, my parents, like I said, were my parents, and especially with the culture barrier, I tried to avoid interacting them into my like stuff. Like, say if I, down the street, if a kid was bothering me or bullying me or something like that, the last thing I would want to do is get my parents involved, because I'd be embarrassed if they came out and, had a dialogue with the kid or their parents or whatever. And there was like a heavy accent or whatever it is. And so, in hindsight, like I said, now I wish I didn't really, I shouldn't have cared about that stuff, but as a kid I did.
Right.
Yeah. So there were some challenges there, and even now, as I've gotten older, and obviously I'm an adult now, um, my relationship with my parents is still very unique, because, well, one, they live overseas in Korea now. They moved back to South Korea probably right around when I graduated college.
Okay.
And so, most people, phase into their adult life and their parents become more of like a friend figure to them.
Right.
And a lot of times in Asian culture, that doesn't really happen. They stay kind of like, there's like a division where it's like, they're your parents, that's their role. You're the kid. And so, like I said, unlike, a lot of other folks who, when they get into their 20s or 30s, become more on a friend level with their parents, that hasn't happened for me. But also at the same time, my parents have, as I've gotten older, they've, I'm trying to think of the right word. They've become more willing to show kind of like affection and things. Maybe just because I'm older, or maybe times have changed, but
Right.
it's interesting, But also with my parents, I had a double-edged sword, because not only was I growing up in an Asian culture, my dad's a minister, and so we were a very conservative household, and so you double that with being a Asian household, conservative, and then also a religious, like a minister's household with the
Right.
conservative level. So it was like double what a lot of other people were going through. So, but once again, now that I look back at it, I'm actually glad that I kind of grew up in a strict household, because it gave me a lot of kind of values and principles that I have now, and it made my skin a lot thicker than I think. I don't think it would have been that way if I didn't have that. So
Nice. And that kind of speaks to, I know you personally, and your level of discipline, how you carry yourself, like that. I have a tremendous regard for that. That you're honorable, the like the whole 9 yards. Not for nothing, I know I get the polished and finished version, but you're one heck of a dude.
I appreciate that. I think, growing up, my parents were very big on our image per se, especially in the, because we were the minister's family, I had to always be on my P's and Q's. I always had to, all the other kids would, be able to kind of dress a little bit more casually to church. I'd have to kind of dress up. I was representing, my parents, and it's almost like that, they didn't want to give anybody a reason to say, wow, the minister's kid is, wild, or, the minister's kid is misbehaving. And so, my mom was very strict on how I represented myself in front of people. And so I think that carried on to my adult life for sure. So I always try to be, I try to present myself in a good way, whether that's appearance wise, or, just being well-spoken, or the way I treat others. I think, growing up where I kind of had to be conscious of what other people were thinking. And I know that sounds kind of bad, because obviously we shouldn't really care what other people think to a certain level. But at the same time, I think it is good to kind of understand like how you're portraying yourself, and making sure that's in a good light. And, I don't do it to set an example by any means. Obviously, everyone has the right to kind of do or say what they want. But I just don't want everyone to give someone else a reason to, say, wow, he's a part of that group or a part of that organization, and look at the way he carries himself. So I never want to, provide low hanging fruit to people to be like, why are you associating with him? So I try to represent the people that, that I'm with, well.
And to kind of speak to that, I grew up in a household a lot the same way. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, and it very much was that, where, and to this day, I have strands of that. They're not as pronounced. I've kind of rebelled. I get, maybe that's the word I want to pick. Rebelled against that, where I what someone else thinks of me is none of my business. I've now graduated to that part, as opposed to very much so. It needed to be just so. You need to make sure you're carrying yourself and with dignity, with respect, but to almost to a fault, for me anyway. Like it got to a point where I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can do both. and be happy, and you know what I'm saying. Not to say
Yeah.
that you know what I mean. Just it's just different, and
Right.
but to that same point, I feel like there's a tremendous space where it enabled me to grow more in depth, if that makes sense. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot more depth to my thoughts. There's a lot more depth to the person that I've become. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I just, I've always been, I've always cared a lot about my impact on others. And I think I get that from my dad. And so, like I said, especially like in high school, for example, um, most minister kids, people joke around, like, they say like, we're the worst ones. Like you said, like we rebel, like, because, our households are really strict with rules and things like that. And I probably could have. I also think I had it a little easier. I have an older sister, so I think she got the brunt of like my parents' strictness because she came first. So they were a little looser on me, but they were still, in context to others, they were still really strict on me. And in high school, especially, instead of kind of being the rebellious kid, I was a pretty, straight arrow, good kid, like, and almost to the point where, I tell people sometimes where some of my friends in high school, I was like the first one to get my license, first one to get a cell phone and things like that. And other kids' parents knew I was such a good kid that I was almost like a chaperone level. Like if we wanted to go to the movies Friday night, like they would say like, oh, okay, like Joe's going, like we feel comfortable, like him driving you, or we feel comfortable with him being there. But it also, on the back end, it also got me kind of, some of my friends who wanted to maybe go to a party or do something like that, I was always the angel on the shoulder that said like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this or get into this kind of trouble. And, there was times where it definitely affected like my friendships with people, because I was kind of like the wet blanket of the group. They were like, well, if we really want to have fun, maybe we don't want Joe there because he's going to kind of be our conscience. But, I just always want to have a good impact. So in high school, I didn't really care what other people thought of me if I messed up or did something wrong. It was more of, I didn't want my dad or my mom to be affected by like my poor decision, because they were in a kind of a public eye with being, the minister, the minister's wife. And, last thing I would want is to make their lives harder because of what their kid is doing. And so, and I still am like that today with my friends or with my company that I work for, or whatever it is. I don't want to give other people a reason to say anything negative about them.
Absolutely. And to the angel on the shoulder, when we started hanging out, that you were that for me, but in the most positive way that a person could be that, like the Jiminy Cricket of my life in that space. For that very reason, but I I love that, because one, I needed it. If we're being completely candid on this deal, I 100% needed it, because I was all the way on one end of the spectrum by then, and you were one of the focal points that allowed me to kind of back to
Right.
to the middle. So
yeah, I mean, that's kind of you say, but it goes both ways. I wish, there's times in hindsight that I think I wish. It's a balance, if I provided that for you, you probably provided for me, the ability or like kind of the encouragement to like loosen up a little bit, or like let my hair down sometimes, and just like, not worry about what people are going to say or whatever, or what people are going to think about me if I do this. And, so I had, you and some others, for sure helped me have fun and just, not worry so much about what's going to happen. It's still something I'm working on today. I think there's times where I need to be less worried about what the result's going to be and just enjoy the moment. And so I think it's a balance. I think every friendship, relationship, partnership, group of friends needs people in different roles, right?
Right.
Roles like maybe me, that's a little bit more, like the dad of the group per se, or whatever it is. Roles like, kind of the wild child, where they're instigating stuff and or making you think outside the box, or kind of pushing your limits a little bit. So I think every relationship or group needs people in different roles. So if everyone thinks the same and acts the same, it's not going to be any good,
Oh yeah, and then it becomes an echo chamber where everybody's just nodding and smiling and everything sounds the same. So
right.
You made mention, graduated from NC State. Alma
Mhm.
mater. So, what kind of tell me? I know, and here's a story. I know you remember when we met for the first time. It was within that college structure, and you we were out playing poker, doing whatever, having a good time, and I was like, dude, we got to hang out. Give me your number, and I will never forget as long as I draw breath. You put in my phone the Asian sensation, and that was I looked at it like when I got back to the house or whatever. I was like, how cool is this dude? I don't even have like a moniker or what. What?
I mean, I don't know if that was I think that was a self-given moniker that was probably not earned by any means. Yeah, no, it's funny. When I tell people of how we met, I mean, pretty much. So I met you actually right after I finished school. And I had passions of becoming a professional poker player, and we met at a poker game, and then a group of people were going to go up to Atlantic City, and then we had met, I think maybe once, and uh, we basically, you and I carpooled because I think other people went up earlier to Atlantic City, and then you and I were going to go the next night, and so we were like, hey, let's just carpool together, and we drove all through the middle of the night to get to Atlantic City, and here I am with this guy that I've met once, and we bonded over, listening to Joe Budden and just having a good conversation. And so, yeah, so that's always a fond memory of the time when I met you for sure.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. The take us to the like your travel. Like I recognize that you travel a lot. Obviously, your parents living overseas at this particular point. What do you have a thirst to do that, or is that kind of something that just a natural progression of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, obviously loves to travel, and I wish I could kind of tout. There's people who travel a lot more than I do, and I do a lot of traveling. It's a lot. Most of it's related to work, domestically, like within the States. More recently, last like 2 years, I've tried to really, make overseas travel, and so that's been more recently as far as international traveling. But I do love traveling for work. I have a job or a role with my company where it is heavily travel based, where I travel around to different locations within our company and get to interact with different employees. And I really enjoy that. And mainly because, I have the flexibility to do so. I don't have, I'm not a family guy like you where I've got, 3 kids at home and a wife. I don't have any pets. And so I'm able to be gone for days at a time. So I really do enjoy that. Obviously during COVID, it's hasn't happened as much, but I love it. I love to be somewhat spread out. And the main thing is I like to be exposed to different people, like, different, whether they're friends or new people or whatever it is. I love that engagement aspect of traveling. And then on a personal level, as far as like more vacation stuff or international traveling, I try to, I'm not the most, there's people who are willing to try any foods or like kind of say yes to everything. I'm not quite that, but I think international traveling is helped me to kind of push my boundaries a little bit to put myself out there and try new things or see new things and things like that. So, and I want to do it while I can. Eventually, if I do get married and have kids, obviously it gets harder to be able to go for a week or two at a time. And so,
Right.
I definitely want to kind of, see as much as I can before, whatever happens in the future. So.
Now and I've made mention as well as you have of how much your willingness to help others. Like you feel like that. I feel like that's a passion for you, and operating in that space. Also leading with your company, leading some diversity and social justice type things. Kind of speak to that and some of the things that you guys are implementing, and just the nature of the society that we live in.
Yeah, it's obviously 2020 has been a challenging year for so many reasons, and so our company, I was able to help be a part of a team that kind of looked within and try to analyze, what can we do? What are the pain points in our company, or what are the gaps that we need to fill as far as, just highlighting and being an ally to change. And so, obviously this summer with, the death of George Floyd, kind of brought about this passion across the country for, social, a social justice platform, and kind of highlighting things that were going on that have been going on for a long time. So, I was a small part of a team that, tried to, figure out what as a company can we do internally to make our company a better place to work for everybody. And so, so that was great to be a part of. We had a great team to speak to different perspectives. But, my main thing is as a person, I really don't like to see anybody hurt or kind of in a bad place or, upset about anything. And so, my passion, like, once again, I think I get it from my dad, who, as a minister, he obviously tries to help people. My goal is just to bring, be a positive impact on whoever I'm interacting with, whether that's, close friends, the company I work for and the employees that work for them, or anybody, if I can make at least one small kind of impact on somebody, then that's a win. And, that kind of trickles down into, the role that I'm with my company as far as our employee engagement platform, just try to, I try to play the big brother role with people, not saying that I know it all or have been through it all or know better than anybody else, but I try to take whatever I've been through or whatever experiences I know or whatever knowledge I can share and share that with people. So that way it helps them maybe skip a step or, accelerate their growth. And so I really enjoy seeing others succeed. And that's a reason why I really enjoy my role with my company, is because I'm able to help, our employees and our people, try to get to where they're going, and whatever way I can do that, whether it's just simple kind of an encouraging conversation or more of an informational thing where I kind of show them how to do something, however I can help. I try to be a jack of all trades and fill different holes that we need to fill and just make things easier for others.
Well, that's outstanding. I wanted to also touch on the fact that every relationship, whether it be how you friend or whatever, like there's a tremendous amount of depth to all of those relationships for my eyes. Is that kind of just how you do it, or is there some synergy or chemistry that allows you to do it depending upon the person? Because I would genuinely like to know, because I think that's very unique. I've never really seen, like, obviously I have deep relationships with a handful of people, but like I said, for my observing of your life in the space, almost all of your relationships kind of have the same depth, do anything for you, love and respect kind of conjoined in all of them.
Well, I appreciate it. Obviously you'll have to ask, the people that I'm close with, if that's, it's not just me, that makes that relationship work. I can only take credit for my side. Once again, what I try to do with everybody, especially, friends that I've known for a long time or closer relationships, is, I try to approach it as a partnership. I try to approach it as listen, whatever you need, I'm here for you, whether it's a shoulder to cry on or just someone to, talk to, or, someone just to be around, or, things like that. And I think, just trying to be authentic in your relationship, and really being authentic to yourself. And kind of what we talked about at the beginning is, I kind of, I'm pretty self-aware with like kind of how I am. Mm-hmm. And so I try not to go, I try to be authentic to that. And, if someone's looking for a friendship with me where they're like, we want like the party starter, or we want the guy who's going to get on top of the table, like, that's probably not me. And so I'm not going to try to fill that role. So what I try to do is fill the role that I know I'm capable of, which is, be present, for whatever you need, as, whether it's, a birthday party or, your kid's birthday party or your wedding or whatever it is. I try to be there for like the important moments. And, but I also at the same time try to give people space as well. I don't want to force a relationship either. And I think a lot of people do that. And I think one thing I've learned, especially as I've gotten older in the last few years, is, relationships are like, are dynamic, and they're moving parts, and they change and they adapt. And, I think some people get really upset with and nostalgic because, say if your best friend from high school, you guys used to spend every day together and talk about this, and this. And 5 years later, you're graduating college and maybe you went to separate colleges, and you expect the same exact kind of relationship that you had before. And I think that's where kind of relationships go sideways, is that you set an expectation on it, and then you hold it to that standard instead of adapting with it and accepting the new changes of the relationship. And then also, if you have this expectation of like how often we should talk, or how often we should see each other, or like things like, or like not respecting the other person's relationship with someone else, getting jealous of that, things like that. So what I try to do is understand, like, understand myself, give the other person space to be themselves, and then meet in the middle somewhere. And, even some of my closest friendships now, they look a lot different than they did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5, 10 years ago. And I'm okay with that. Even with you and I, we don't, there was times where we saw each other almost every day or talked every day, but now we talk maybe sometimes every couple months, and that's okay, and as long as it's okay for both people. Obviously, if one person was not okay with it and one person was, and there's going to be some friction there too. And so I don't know. It's hard to answer kind of your question in terms of like, because it makes it sound like I'm responsible for like deep relationships with people, but I'm just doing my part, and I'm just trying to approach it in a way where it's like, however this relationship kind of ebbs and flows, that's okay with me. And then if, I have had some relationships that I don't really communicate with the person anymore, not because there's any negativity or any, like, we don't like each other anymore. It's just the context of our lives now, where we are in our lives. Our friendship is maybe still there, but at the same time, it's not an active friendship. And so, you kind of have to have no pride with a relationship, whether it's a friendship or, a marriage or whatever it is. You can't have this expectation on your side that you put onto the relationship because there's two people in it. So, or even with a group, it's like, one of my groups from high school, that I used to hang out with, everyone has kind of done their own thing. And, we maybe see each other, talk to each other once a year for holidays. And we get together, we reminisce and do all that stuff. And the love is still there. But at the same time, the dynamics of our relationship has changed. And so I'm okay with that. And I think you just have to be able to understand that and not get so caught up in like what it's supposed to be.
I'm with you. I think that was a phenomenal answer. Like a lot like you and I's relationship. To your point, I've got a wife and 3 kids, so my day looks ridiculously different than it used to when to your point, we saw each other every day or we talked every day. And it's different, and having that willingness to say like, hey, I'm going to make an effort to make sure that like my relationship with you matters to me so much that I'm going to make a effort to make sure that even if it's just, hey, what's up? How you doing?
Sure.
In my day, like.
Yeah. And you're really great about that. And sometimes I'm not actually. And I think understanding, there's a foundation of our relationship, our friendship, for example, like, where we've got love and for each other, and we're rooting for each other, all that stuff. And so there's a foundation of that. But like I said, things kind of change a little bit and adapt, where now you're in a completely different space than I am, where you are married and have 3 kids. it wouldn't make sense for me to be your first phone call about, hey, listen, I've been stressed about family stuff lately, whatever. I could obviously listen and try to provide whatever I can for you, but you may naturally go to somebody else that also has kids to talk that through. And if I were to get offended by that, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like as your friend, I want you to do whatever you need to do to feel better or to whatever it is. And so once again, like it's, like if you're trying to like compare relationships, like if I try to compare our friendship to your friendship with someone else that I know,
right, then
it's not going to do me any good. And so, when you do come to me, I will be open arms and try to help in whatever way possible, whether that's, hey, let's go to Atlantic City and hit the craft stable, or if it's like a catch-up phone call or whatever it is. There's no right or wrong to relationships. And I think some people think that like I said, it's supposed to be certain things, or it's supposed to check off certain boxes. And,
right.
And also it can like I said, it can go, it's up and down, where, there may be a month where we talk, 2, 3, 4, 6 times. And there may be 2 months where we just don't even speak at all. But I have confidence in our friendship that that's okay,
Absolutely. Absolutely. To just kind of an aside, I want to ask you on wax and out here in public, why you felt so venomous towards me in video games with number one basketball picks. I just want to have it out there so for public consumption, because I feel like even in Facebook has done me a disservice in that regard, giving me time hops and reminding me how much you assaulted me in basketball games.
I think it was definitely like a Napoleon complex. I know that I'm not a good video game player, right? And so when I see you, I see the person at the top of the mountain as far as, when we were playing video games back then. So, that was me kind of, puffing up my chest and trying to slay the dragon, in essence of, making this big statement of like, hey, I beat the guy, and my victories are few and far between. So when I do have them, I need to make sure people are aware of it, especially the person that I defeated. And so that way I could have something over the course of time where, my one victory versus your 100, hey, listen, I'm going to make everyone aware of it, And so that was, like I said, that was more of a, probably a self-conscious thing, more of a thing to feed my own ego or give myself some confidence in the video game world. But obviously since then you could probably play with your eyes closed and handle me. So.
Oh no! Now it's quite the opposite. My kids do all the playing, and I'm as my oldest, even my daughter, my oldest son and my daughter both tell me. Even Logan, being 5 years old, tell me I'm terrible. Dad, let mom play. Like life kind of happens that way. But no, I'm with you, and it. To this day, like it's like scratching the back of my head. So you got me. I don't know that we'll ever play again in life, but you got me.
Now I will say, I mean, for my lack of video game talent, I do feel pretty confident in my trash talking ability.
I'll co-sign that.
So even if I have no leg to stand on, I will find a way to talk some trash.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that feels like a long time ago. So I don't even I won't even bring that up. I mean, you're the one that brought it up, so I'll talk about it. But I wouldn't even dare to try to brag about it now.
Well, that's because it's still sitting in here somewhere.
I hear you, man. I hear you. You gotta let that go. You gotta let it go.
When Steve Nash got announced as the Brooklyn Nets basketball coach, I turned the TV off. Like nobody understood.
I mean, that's the art of good trash talking, is that you ingrain something in someone's brain so that way it triggers when someone's word or a word comes up or someone's picture comes up, it's ingrained in your brain to remember that moment. And so I guess I succeeded at that.
Absolutely. What's next for you? Like, is it once COVID restrictions and everything like that? Is the first move to go travel? Is the first move to kind of just get out of the house? What's the first move for you once everything kind of runs back to normal, as it were?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Obviously, as long as everything's safe and things like that. And I completely understand both sides of people. Some people are being a little bit more cautious and conservative with, their reaction to COVID. And some people are frustrated that things aren't kind of, getting back to quote unquote normal. And it's a tough topic to talk about it. But as far as me personally, I've kind of experienced both ends because, for work, I have, since COVID started, I have traveled a little bit for work.
Okay.
And so, my main hope is that, people who are struggling, small businesses, things like that, I hope, they get back on their feet, quickly, and they avoid having to, completely shut down. I couldn't imagine being in those people's shoes. And so as far as, on a personal level, I would love to start traveling without restrictions, eventually, and just having people be able to interact like they used to, and, not have to worry about, have something in the back of their mind as far as, do I hug this person? Do I not? Are we able to gather with a group of 10 people,
Right.
just especially, families and loved ones who, really, cherish those moments. It'll be interesting to see during this holiday time how, people's mental health is affected by maybe not being able to see their grandkids or, their aunts and uncles or their friends, and people spending maybe holidays alone, especially since, most of the year has been very isolated already.
Oh yeah.
And so I just hope, we get back to a place that, where people can kind of enjoy their lives without, having to worry about stuff. And whether that's with some restrictions or not, that I'm not going to sit here and argue about. It's just more of like, I hope people can have the security of, the financial side and also the mental health side of being able to enjoy their daily lives, for sure.
Absolutely. We definitely share that. Well, brother, I appreciate your time. I cannot thank you enough for coming on to the show and kind of sharing your story and giving the people a little more information about kind of how you move and what's going on with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was fun. It went by quickly. So, I'm happy for you and this new endeavor, and hopefully it goes well. I know it will, because you're a passionate guy. And so I know that you'll put everything you got into it, and I'm excited to watch all the other folks and learn something from them, and whatever I can do to help.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. This has been another episode from the root to the fruit. I've been Jay Smith. That's Joe Wu. Thank you guys. Please like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton. You guys have a good day. Cheers.